Today's episode is brought to you by the most diverse meta of all time.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Oh, I've been better. I've been better. I'm not going to lie. But Overwatch League has begun, and overall it was honestly a super fun, super exciting weekend. So I'm not going to complain or wallow too much in the struggles of my particular team and just focus on, the level of parity we saw this weekend, Blevins, is not anything I expected. And I think we're in for a hell of a season. It was a really good opening week.
All the transitive property truthers are already debunked.
Their heads have already exploded. Yeah, it took 3 days for that to fall apart. We'll still use it, though, as long as it benefits us and our argument.
It does this week for me, at least. But we will get into that very shortly. Let's talk about some housekeeping stuff. What's been going on in the High Noon world? Blackwatch Report, of course. The Rock Steady, always going on. Check them out. Blackwatch Reports. They have their own feed. They have their own Twitter. They have their own everything. Check them out. Kyle and Thornrain. They're good people. Make sure.
And Tier 2 doesn't sleep. All these players that got pulled up are all getting replaced right now. There's crazy signings going on. So if you're at all interested in contenders, Blackwatch Report, easily the best place to keep up to date with everything that's going on. If you're struggling to watch that and Overwatch League, let us here at the High Noon Network or High Noon Productions fill all the gaps for you.
Yes. We've got Foul Play episode. Deathblow, you and A. Smith carried the torch last week as I was busy, which we'll talk about in a minute. And we're doing another episode right after this one. So if you're here live, stick around, listen to the next episode of Foul Play for Fantasy Overwatch. And this first week we got a lot of information. I think a lot of people are going to be doing some signings, some dropping, some maybe just running a new draft after this week. I know I wish I could, but
I know I specifically didn't max out my league so that way I could do some that weren't with all the preseason insanity. Like, that's super fun. But so is drafting with knowledge and not spending a first-round pick on a guy on the bench. Yeah, it'll help. And so if you guys aren't in fantasy leagues yet, we have a lot of fun with it. Get a group of your friends together, join our Discord. We'll help you guys find a league as well. Make sure you guys get in. It's not too late. I know the season started. There's still plenty of fun to be in.
Yes, and you can also use the High Noon Podcast Discord to start leagues if you want to. There's almost always people in there that are just like, hey, I need one more, I need two more, I need a couple more. Anyone want to do a league? Like, we're always there to facilitate that for sure. Now, Around the Payload was supposed to start next week. It didn't. Unforeseen circumstances that I'm not going to get into. But this week I've confirmed. I've double confirmed. I have backups in case. Rain, sleet, snow, or hail, even if I have to just put on 4 separate costumes and do 4 separate voices, Around the Payload is happening this week. It's happening tomorrow on Tuesday live here at twitch.tv/High Noon Podcast. It's coming out in podcast land later that night. It's happening. We've got Volamel, of course, the one and only. We've got Mushu Beef coming back, Monkey Prince of the High Noon Podcast staff coming back, and fan favorite, the probably most requested person that I have personally had people message me and request to come back. That, of course, is Moirai coming back to, I believe, defend her crown. Although,
Moirai with her swanky new job title, and she's been busy, really popping off lately over there. So good for her.
Yes,
it'll be great to check in with her again. Can't wait.
Yes, gonna be great. Okay, I swear we're almost done with stuff, but I am going to be on Cheddar Sports tomorrow talking about Overwatch League. It's gonna be fun. I was on Cheddar a while ago. I'm doing a segment with them tomorrow. I don't really know the details. They said, hey, do you want to come talk about Overwatch League? I go, yeah, I do. So I'm going to talk about Overwatch League, which is basically all I ever do. So check that out. I think that's going to be, the show is 5 Eastern on twitch.tv/cheddar or anywhere else. There's like 100 places to find it. So check that out. The power ranking contest in the Discord, like I have been saying for the past month, closed. Done. Message me and say that you want to get in late. Nope. I'm just gonna give a NO period. Nothing else. It's done. It's closed. It's locked. If anyone has any questions about why they didn't get in, just message me on Discord. I'm ready. I'm ready to just be like NO period. Boom. There you go. Not getting in. But good luck to everyone that did start, that did get in. I got in on time. And if I can do it, anyone could have.
Barely.
It's too late now. Barely is right. I was like I only had a few more hours to get there. But last bit of housekeeping here. Got a new patron. Hype for the new patron. We've got I've never known how to actually pronounce this name, but I'm going to say Lee.
I'm pretty sure it's Lee. I have a cousin with that spelling of a name, and it's said Lee, so I've always gone with Lee.
But if I put an S in front of it, I would say Slay. I don't know. Lacey, not Lacey.
Thankfully, there's no S in front of
Lee, yeah. Lee, we'll go Lee C, not Lacey or Lacey. The $5 level on patreon.com/HighNoonPodcast. Thank you so much. If you do have a message for us that you want to hear read on the show, please either send me a message on Patreon, send one of us a message on Discord, or somehow yell at us. We will talk about it on the show, as is your Patreon and High Noon Podcast given right.
He's got no problems yelling at us on Discord, so I'm sure we'll get the message.
Yes. All right. Enough about housekeeping. Let's talk about what we did last week. Death, anything fun and exciting for you?
Watched just all the Overwatch League I possibly could and played a little Apex Legends. That's really... it's the middle of the season now, Blevins. That's what our life is. Now
well, it's not the middle, but it's the beginning. But yeah.
Well,
we're in the season,
somewhere in between the start and the finish. So that's all we can do is watch. Our vacations are Wednesday. That's our vacation now.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, pretty much. So this is where we're at. It's all Overwatch all the time, and at least for right now, I'm not at all burnt out on it and just super pumped. So yeah, it's.
Yeah, super pumped. super pumped, and we'll be super pumped to talk about what happened last week as well as what's coming up this week. But for me, like we alluded to earlier, I did the community countdown cast for the 1v1 Ash matches and the 1v1 Anna paintball matches with Lemon Kiwi, Jaws, Leg Day, and Chan Man. That was super fun. It was really low key. We just hung out. Jaws and Leg Day like pseudo casted the matches, and we just kind of chimed in with silly stuff and jokes. It was fun. It was definitely low key, not a professional, Overwatch League cast, but it was fun. And huge shout outs to all the aforementioned folks I was on with. Shout outs to Chan Man for inviting me, and shout outs to everyone who watched, because it was fun. The chat was getting a little rowdy, and I was trolling them by saying I had Defran in my back office, and I was going to bring him on, but I sure didn't. People were like saying free Defran, and I said I will go get Defran if we can get the chat to not say free Defran for 3 minutes. And man, that's something that I didn't think Twitch chat was capable of doing, but boy oh boy, they got close. But here's the thing: I was also in that chat, and I said free Defran. And then
the level 2 strategy.
Yeah, I debated him. I had it in my back pocket the whole time. It was good stuff. But other than that, I also went to the franchise inauguration for Toronto Defiant, the watch party. It was awesome. Huge shout outs to Adam from Overactive Media, who invited me and was awesome and hospitable. And also, let me bring this up. Also was awesome and gave me a Defiant jersey, and I bring it up to thank him because he's a listener of the show, so huge shout outs to him. But also, I wanted to we were talking about the jerseys before, and I was like, man, I don't know how good these jerseys are. I feel like I kind of got burned by the jerseys from the first wave of jerseys from last season, and I can now personally attest that these are great. And I'm not just saying that because I got it for free and I'm thankful. It's actually really high quality, nice make, really comfortable, and no, it has not got a bunch of like tears and threads already like out of it after wearing it for a long time. So if you were thinking about buying a jersey and you were on the fence about the quality, it gets above and thumbs up. So they also, I believe, they have at least up to 4Xs, which I know I don't think they had last year. So if you're a bigger gentleman like myself and Deathblow are, where there's now at least an extra size up. So yes, okay, that was a lot.
I was gonna say I appreciate the undersell on my size there.
You know, I just let people see you in person, and they know just how big.
See, I'm the opposite. I prepare everybody. I'm like, you don't understand. I'm Hodor. I'm a giant. It's not normal. Because then when they see me, and I'm like, I'm still actually a human being, they're like, okay. So it's
your Hodor.
It's the expectations game, you know. Your
Hodor, except instead of saying Hodor, you're saying Houston while they're getting killed. Okay, no spoiler. Sorry. Let's. If you know what, if I just ruined your Game of Thrones experience, sorry, sucks. Don't care. Let's move on here. All right, let's get back into the swing. No, the swing of things. Is that it? I don't know. Let's get into it.
It's tournament talk.
All right, man. It's been a while since we've actually got tournament results to talk about. Ooh. All right, let's run through these here. I will go through them, and then we will talk about them as we deem necessary. Thursday, February 14th, we had Philadelphia Fusion 3-1 over the London Spitfire. NYXL 2-1, taking out the Boston Uprising, and Seoul Dynasty 3-1 over LA Gladiators. And the last match for day one was Hangzhou Spark 3-1 over the Shanghai Dragons. Starting the Friday matches, we had Toronto Defiant 3-2 over the Houston Outlaws. Rest in peace, my friend. You can't even boo. Toronto's your number 2. That rhymed. Atlanta Reign 4-0 over the Florida Mayhem. Rest in peace, Bare Hands, who's in the chat, and the only reason I call him out specifically. San Francisco Shock 4-0 over Dallas Fuel. And Chengdu Hunters pulling out the 3-2 victory over the Guangzhou Charge. Saturday, we saw Paris Eternal take out the London Spitfire 3-1. NYXL 3-1 over Washington Justice. Hangzhou Spark winning 3-2, taking out the LA Valiant, and the Vancouver Titans picking up a 4-0 victory against the Shanghai Dragons. Last day, we saw Boston Uprising, your favorite team, Death, beat your all other favorite team, the Houston Outlaws, 3-2.
You go to hell and you die, sir.
In that order. I made Bare Hands cry now. I feel bad. Philadelphia Fusion wins 3-2 over the Atlanta Reign. Los Angeles Gladiators 3-2 over San Francisco Shock. And the Dallas Fuel pull out the victory 3-1 over the Seoul Dynasty.
Listen, don't feel bad for making Bare Hands cry. He's going to have plenty of reasons to cry this year. It's gonna be fun. I warned him. He's still here. I warned him.
You're not wrong. All right, let's just start right off at the top of the list here. The Grand Finals rematch, Philadelphia Fusion versus London Spitfire. You can't even call this an upset. Like, obviously London won the champion. I mean, okay, if you take it just from that game to this game, it looks like an upset because London Spitfire won rather convincingly in the Grand Finals. But this victory was convincing, but it was not for the London Spitfire. What do you take away from this one, Death?
It's a new year. It's a new meta. We kind of heard rumblings coming into it that maybe London wasn't great at the GOATS meta. Of all the tank heroes, Fissure's weakness is kind of the Reinhardt. I think that's a little overdone. I think he's a competent Reinhardt, even closer to above average. But maybe not now with all the new talent in the league that really got to show off their Reinhardt skills this week. But at least going into it, he was thought to be, at least by me, to be kind of on the top half of average as far as Reinhardt goes. And Philly is a team. They're hot. They're cold. They can beat anybody at any time. So it's really hard to, with their history, at least until we see that kind of get erased, and they're off to a decent start for doing that for themselves this year. Until we see that get erased, we kind of have to take any Philly results with a grain of salt, right? If they beat a team you think is better than them, that doesn't necessarily mean you were wrong about your evaluation of the two teams. So, but for right now, at least, especially 2-0 versus 0-2 with the benefit of hindsight after the whole week, I think it's just safe to say Philly's a little bit stronger in this meta. Maybe London's going to have a bit of an off stage one, but nothing major here. It's week one. It's going to be kind of a mantra as we go through it. No seasons are ruined. No seasons are made yet. There's plenty of time for things to go in a very different direction very quickly. So yeah, I didn't take much from it other than I thought it was really good Overwatch. It was a great way to kind of kick off the season, and Carpe's a beast. What can you say?
True. There is a reason that his name is associated indefinitely with winnable. The one thing that is going to kind of be overarching throughout this entire discussion is that we have two things. Obviously, we have the returning teams who are trying to live up to expectations, surpass expectations, improve whatever. But we also have, they're playing their own type of placement match, but we already have an idea of let's just see where they were at the end of the season, put them there, fill in the blanks with the expansion teams and go from there. And it's almost kind of seeming like maybe everything was kind of wiped to zero a little bit, and we're gonna be back to the drawing board in terms of our power rankings.
Yeah, definitely more so than we expected. We were big to talk up the narrative of slow starts for the expansion teams, and it's 1 week. They could still very well have slow starts, and stage one could be markedly worse for them than later stages. And I think we'll probably see a return to that maybe as the stage goes on. One thing we basically invariably every single team that was in Overwatch League Season 1 talked about the biggest obstacle being the grind. The just stretching it out and maintaining an even keel from week one to the end of the final stage. And that's something these guys haven't had to deal with yet. They came in full of hype and big, and not many of them blinked. That was something we talked about, stepping into the bright lights and blinking. Not many of them did. There were a couple that didn't have great performances, but they need to learn to manage the long haul of this. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It's shortened a little bit from 40 games to 28 games, but it's still going to be something they have to learn to manage. And right now, at least, they seem to have done a pretty good job capitalizing on the hype, the excitement of being here, and their familiarity with a meta that the Overwatch League teams of Season 1 haven't had to play in a really long time. They were on vacation, and these guys were trying to earn contracts and competing in Tier 2. And they're using that to their advantage now. So we'll have to see where it goes from here. But you're definitely not wrong. There was a bit more of a wipe the slate clean. Everybody's at base zero than I think you get with a lot of traditional sports.
True. And to that point, you think about the Season 1 teams, like you said, they know the grind. These teams, they're like, okay, we know how this is going to be. We know how we felt at the beginning of the season. We know how we felt at the end of the season. We know how we can temper that and tone that down and run the marathon and not the sprint. It's possible all these expansion teams are right out of the gun sprinting, and maybe we see a crash at some point. I don't know. Obviously,
they could be winded by stage 2. Who knows? This is all cliches and things like that that don't necessarily have to apply. But their cliches are cliche for a reason, and that's because more often than not they do turn out to be true. And I think with just truth. I think the way of just the fact that every single team from last year just could not stop talking about the pace, the grind, all that stuff means we're at some point at least a handful of these expansion teams are going to slump at some point. But we don't even know that they're not in it right now. It's way too small of a sample size. So
right. All right, moving on here. New York versus Boston. Closer than I would have wanted, obviously, but nonetheless, New York came out. I mean, I think this was more of it. It was a little bit of both NYXL not looking like the absolutely dominant force that they were in stage one, and also Boston not looking like the complete garbage fire that we thought they were going to be.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if we knew about the Fusions call up when we did the last episode.
They should.
At least 2 episodes ago we didn't, and to be honest, we didn't really know what this team was going to look like, right? Because they called him up really, really late, and we thought, wrongly assumed that Axiom might get that starting job just because he'd been there for a little while longer. And when we say they called up Fusions late, we mean he was in England like 3 weeks ago. You know what I mean? Like, he came in really, really late into even joining the team in LA. So it was just a little unclear whether or not he'd be up to speed. He's obviously a very, very good Reinhardt player, so his style fits the GOATS meta very, very well. And it's funny, Boston went from going, from being a one-trick dive team last season with a tank that didn't really have the ability to play much Reinhardt into now they're kind of the exact opposite. Now they're more of like a one-trick GOATS team, and that'll get better hopefully when Color Hex comes back in and they're working at full capacity and have their full roster. But I think it's just very derivative of their tank play, right? Like Fusions is a notable Reinhardt and a bit of an unknown Winston. I don't want to say he's lackluster at it. We haven't gotten to see it a ton. But yeah, it's just absolutely crazy to think that he was able to come in and play that well with that team on such a short notice. I think clearly, this is something I talked about when we did the team previews, I believe, where like we said last year, if Boston with that roster was legitimate and like made the playoffs, we just kind of had to assume Huck was a genius and couldn't really underrate them again. Then the whole narrative started, and we don't know the full impact that'll have, but at the same time, we need to this team's probably not going to be worse than mid-table, right? With that performance, with Fusion so new coming in, with having done this before, maybe they're just clearing out the players that aren't happy and they're keeping the ones that are. It's the problem with these closed door things, and that's why we don't talk too much about the hearsay. And this one was very pervasive, and the players were talking about it, so we had to. But you never know the full story with this stuff, and this one at least appears to have been overblown in how it affected our predictions of them, because they're definitely, they're incomplete right now, and they're potentially better than like adequate mid-table as we see them right here. So,
well, plus it's like, how do you lose Striker and get better? Well, here's the thing, Striker barely played. Really didn't play that much for San Francisco. So
I think he caught one map.
Which was not great for my.
It was definitely questioning. But I will say, if we're going to have time to get through everything, we got to start to pick up the pace on the recap.
Let's pick up the pace here. Soul Dynasty and Fissure beating out LA Gladiators, being his former team. Anything notable here?
Michelle's starting instead of Zumba at main tank. Jexy is starting as well over Toby and main support for Soul. They definitely look improved. We'll talk more about some more of their results later on as well. But I think we're looking at an improved team that needs time to gel with the number of pieces they're changing out right now. They were able to get the win here against the Gladiators, who are also gelling and working in some new pieces and waiting for Decay to turn 18 so they can unleash him. And, so there's a lot to this matchup, and I don't take a ton away from it because I thought these were both kind of top half teams that went up against each other, and one of them won. So good showing here from Soul, obviously, to get this win. We talked about the importance of kind of the first match and the potential swinginess that gave to the second match of the week last week. So it's definitely really interesting to see. This is part of that thing that blew up the minds of the fans of the transitive property. This was the first piece to that.
Yes,
so we'll piece of the puzzle.
We'll show you all the pieces as they come up here. But yeah, this is piece number one.
Yep. Fissure obviously did a fine job, but was not didn't really seem as Fissure and dominant as he was.
Not a world beater. It didn't seem to have the same effect that he had going over to the Gladiators. But again, the Gladiators were like a full 5 of 6. He was taking over one spot, and here there's a couple other new pieces plugging in as well. So we'll have to wait and see.
For sure. Moving on here, Hangzhou Spark becomes the first Chinese team to get a win. That honor not going to the Shanghai Dragons, who they beat. Shanghai looked better than they did last year, but Hangzhou also looks pretty good. Anything else here?
Yeah, listen, I think, and people aren't going to necessarily like this too much, I think there's still a lot unknown about Hangzhou right now. I didn't take much away from this win against Shanghai. I almost thought it was more telling that Shanghai stole a map from them without a main tank player on their roster than it was like Hangzhou dominated them, which they did overall. Like, they very much so controlled the pace of that game, but as you'd expect, interestingly, I think Hangzhou is still undecided on their main tank. They're splitting time between No Smite and Guxue. How many teams did you see succeed overall, Blevins, when swapping out their pieces of their roster like that in Season 1? Not too many. So I do want to see Hangzhou commit to one of these guys. If what they're doing is they're using stage time, because listen, there's practice players and then there's gamers. There's people that show up on stage, and I respect a team that wants to try both on stage to figure out who the starter's going to be. But to me, at the end of the day, I'm very firmly in the Guxue camp. But at this point, if Hangzhou is going to succeed, I thought both of them played fairly well. I think the team can do well with either of them. But I think they need to pick one and go with it. Unless it was like a Reinhardt versus Winston and they were going to swap them kind of a discussion, maybe I could listen to that. But I don't think that's what that was. I think they were using them both on both heroes. And I don't know. We'll have to watch that a little bit more. But that worries me from Hangzhou a little bit. A couple of the expansion teams did extra roster swapping than was necessary, I think.
Yeah. And I don't think you can possibly be so confident that you're like, oh, we're gonna throw in our backups with some garbage time like they would at the end of an NBA game when they're up by 80.
Right.
There's just
this was like map 2. It was 1-1, and they were making swaps and stuff. And that, that's not what this was.
Yeah. So still a lot of unknowns on both sides, honestly. But moving on here, in quite possibly the closest match we ended up seeing, or at least
both of the Houston matchups were very, very arguably the closest matchup.
Yeah. Toronto, in the last point of the last map, ends up eking out the victory over Houston. And as much, I mean, obviously I was hyped because I was there with a bunch of people. Hype, It was super hype. It was awesome. I went through a roller coaster of emotion. I actually had a tweet lined up where I said that this was in map 3. I had a tweet that said, this was after Linkser popped off on that first point. I go, actual map score, Toronto 2, Houston 2, Linkser 1. I'm like, there's no way. And then they ended up coming back and winning. So it was pretty crazy there. And there was a couple of things that came out of this that we talked about a couple of days ago, just chatting. And like one of the big things was like, they threw Houston threw on Volskaya when they had Linkser play the Reaper. And I'm like, okay, it didn't work out. But there's also a universe where like a couple of things go differently and Linkser actually pops off and crushes the 3-3 comp there with Reaper, and all of a sudden everyone's running Reaper on Volskaya instead of like, they threw. It's like, now everyone's running the Reaper on Volskaya and he looks like a genius.
Right.
So
It was close, but at the end of the day, Volskaya Point 1 is a map that you have to take. Like that is a point that should not be difficult for you to capture. Maybe 2-3 attempts most. Like, and honestly, if you're taking a third attempt to take Volskaya, you didn't have a good attack run with it. So the fact that they got full held there was brutal. But as far as the match overall goes, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, and this is something I definitely said immediately after the match before my team went 0-2 on the weekend, I thought they outplayed Toronto almost kind of like handily. They won map 1. They won map 1, and they won it, I thought, with good control. It was 2-1 score on control, but I thought they were in control of the points. They won handily. There was some back and forth to it for sure, but some of it was like Houston's. Close. Yeah, it was close, but I thought Houston won it decisively. Yeah. And we go into map 2, and Houston absolutely cleaned their clock. Discord was talking about how amateurish Toronto looked, and I didn't really agree with them at the time when they were saying it, but that's just to show to me how decisive that particular map was. And then the reverse sweep came into play. Like you mentioned, the Volskaya attack failed, but even on that, like Houston's defense on Volskaya was super good. Toronto didn't take point 2. So if we just do, if they get that, right, if they just get like a halfway attack on point 2, if they took point 1, they were probably going to take point 2 because they didn't have a lot of progress that they needed there. And then we're looking at a 3-1 map score, and kind of like you said, the whole one fight changes the entire narrative for the way we're talking about Houston right now. But either way, regardless, Toronto was a team that was missing pieces, so that it's not to make excuses
missing
for
a
Houston.
very big piece in
But
Neko.
they're arguably their best player in Neko. So I thought this was a phenomenal debut for Toronto. I think they're looking good to be one of the mid-table teams, which is probably 15 teams at this point. But it's going to be really interesting. I think we're in for a lot of parity, and hopefully Toronto can be a big part of that. I'm hoping to root for them a lot. A lot of their mistakes, I thought, were fixable by Neko coming back, right? Because Aid played really, really well. Rocky looked Rocky to me. Go figure, right? And so I think you shift Aid back over to his natural main support spot. You bring Neko in, who we think is going to be and prove to continue to be a top tier flex support player in Overwatch League. I think that's going to do wonders to clean up any of the issues they had. To me, a lot of the issues Rocky had might not even be his fault. Like, if they only are missing Neko for 3 games, do you think they were scrimming with the guy that is filling in for him all off season?
Right.
Probably not. So I think they're in a pretty good spot here. Definitely better right out of the gates than I thought. And not really a team that I think is going to be overly, because they were cobbled together. They weren't like a pre-existing roster.
Only
I think
a chunk of it was from O2.
A chunk of it, yeah. But like they were a little more cobbled together than most, I should say. And yeah, so I think they're going to be in a good spot to maybe be more meta resilient than some of the other expansion teams that looked good this week. But either way, great debut for Toronto, rough start for Houston. But yeah, I think, like I said, I think Houston did outplay Toronto a little bit there, just fell short to actually get the win in a super, super close and honestly very exciting series. So if you missed that one, really either of the Houston matchups this week, as much as I might not like the ending, the ride was pretty great the whole way.
Definitely a rewatch there. I mean, like you said, there were some small things from Toronto. I remember clearly thinking Yakpong played fine, but like you could see like, oh, hey, use your ults a little bit more effectively, or there were some times, like you said, Rocky really just didn't. He played mediocre, and like there are times where Houston just exploited that. There were times where you could tell. You could tell that this was their first game on stage. Like they got completely crumpled in that second map. They came out very strong, I thought, but still lost on map 1. But it really showed, and if you're a Toronto fan, I would say it showed a lot of room for improvement here. Tie up some of those loose ends. It's not like they got completely dominated and outskilled, which we saw a lot last year, like when we were looking at, Shanghai Dragons. When you looked at Shanghai Dragons last year at points, it never looked like they could ever win. Right? Yeah. Like it was like, oh, they got 4-0'd, they got dominated, they got 3-1, they got dominated, and it's like I don't even see an out for them. With Toronto, obviously they won, and also there's still a lot of room for looks like a lot of room for growth, not even just with Neko coming in, which is going to be an obvious level up. I think just their team chemistry and getting used to the stage is going to be great, and getting a win right out of the gate is going to be huge for them. So, and
eking out wins when you're maybe not playing your best and you're making those mistakes, that's how mid-table teams earn themselves spots into the playoffs right there. So that it was a big win for Toronto for really everything, just for starting, for momentum, for just seeding. It was an important one, especially once Houston gave them the opening to go into map 5 there. The fact that they were able to buckle down, focus, and take it in that moment says a lot, I think, about just their kind of mental fortitude and the way they approach things. Like they were able to focus, play their best when it mattered and when it was up for grabs.
Yep. And going from arguably one of the closest games in the entire weekend, we then got to see DeFran and company steamroll 4-0 Florida Mayhem. Anything to pull from this game, Death?
Florida looks bad. Why are you not playing Saya player? I don't care if he doesn't fit the meta, and nobody on your team showed even to me like adequacy. Somebody said, I can't remember who, it was probably like Sideshow, because he's stuck in the UK and just pumping out content like crazy from
spicy tweets
from his desk. So but like you could have just, or maybe it was Doa actually. I think you could just take the nameplates off of these guys, and you wouldn't know they'd made any changes to their roster. There was big mistakes, I thought, by I want to call him Tavik.
Fluffy.
His real name. I could only remember the beta name, of course. But yeah, I thought he made mistakes that were uncharacteristic of him. Like even last year when his play looked like it was declining, there was like moments of brilliance, like the deflected Farah rocket comes to mind. That was like an all-time highlight from season one. And we didn't see that here. I didn't see like an Overwatch League level team playing. It looked night and day, the difference between the two. I'm really, really scared for Florida, and I didn't think we were going to have another Shanghai on our hands here. And maybe we don't. They should be able to sneak out a win. I'll say that about every team, no matter how bad they look forever. But they're not going to do it with Saya player on the bench. So wake up, Florida. He's your best player. You put out a roster intro. Every single player except for Saya, like, just walked up to the bus and got on, but this dude like rolled up in a Ferrari and like opened the wing door and like he's very clearly your star.
Yeah,
your star players on the bench. Like your roster is underperforming, it's underwhelming, and the one piece that looks really, really good is the one piece you're not using. I don't understand it. Hagopin needs help. He was the one that was adequate to me. In the match, he played okay. Other than that, it was ugly, and Florida's in for a rough ride.
Yeah, I hope it's a wake-up call. They had some change. They made a lot of changes from their roster last year, and it didn't work out the way that they wanted to, obviously. So I as a person who routinely picks Florida when maybe I shouldn't, I'm hoping for them.
Bearhand says they're working on some stuff.
We have assurance.
We are rooting for you, my friend. It's rough to. It's hard to see. There are irons in the fire. I like it.
In bare hands we trust is how we'll end that part. Yep. Moving on, we have the second piece of the puzzle, of the parody puzzle. San Francisco Shock with an absolute destruction 4-0 over the Dallas Fuel. I loved the hashtag burn Platt that came out of this loss. It was pretty spicy.
Yeah, things really started out really rough here for Dallas and really, really good for San Francisco. You're right. This is number 2 in the cog here of the wheel.
The parody puzzle.
Yeah, the parody puzzle. It's going to be an interesting season. Let's just say that. Dallas came out really flat. They looked like they hadn't really improved at all. They hadn't made any strides, and it was really confusing because I didn't expect them to be world beaters or even necessarily top half teams, but I did think they'd be improved with longer time under the improved coaching staff, a couple new players, just at least options, right? Like you bring in somebody, I don't have a ton of faith in RCK, but at the end of the day, your old main tank or your old off tank is still here. So now you've gained an option. So I think there was like net positives to be had there. But after this game, I remember thinking like, man, how hard did Siegel carry these guys? Even just to their moderately, you know what I mean? Like moderately not super embarrassing performance.
Not having effect on their team carry these guys.
And speaking of effect, I don't think he had a very good weekend at all. The stats bear it out. He did not look like the high-impact player that he looked like to me last season when they were really popping off and were really, actually playing well, or not even not playing well.
It's tough
when
to
they
be
were
that
doing
player
poorly.
when
He
you're
looked good.
playing. What was he even playing? He obviously wasn't playing DPS. What was he? What role did he play?
Zarya, but he's been known for that. Like he's like the tracking tracer. Like he was even back on Envious days before Overwatch League started, he was their Zarya player, and he was notably really, really good at it. He was the one that, to me, kind of like pioneered the having your tracer player also play the D.Va, the Zarya. Yeah. He was the one to me that pulled it off better than almost everybody else in the past. So I don't know. It's been really surprising to me to see him not be at least a statistical performer. So I don't know. It was a disappointing start there, but things do look up later in the week here for Dallas. So we don't got to harp on him too much.
We'll get into the next piece of the parody puzzle shortly. Not the parody puzzle, but perhaps an eyebrow raiser, at least in terms of many people's power rankings in the preseason. We had Chengdu Hunters, what many people put as bottom 3, I think, at best in most cases.
I think 20 was the most common place I saw them.
Yeah. 3-2 over Guangzhou Charge, who, for what it's worth, did not have much better ratings across the board. But two kind of unknowns, I think, for a lot of the NA crowd, and it was a really close match. And Chengdu ends up coming out on top here.
Yeah, stole the win. I think it just kind of tells us nothing, basically, right? All it tells us is that we were wrong about Chengdu, in that they were likely to be the very, very bottom end, team. I think that's probably unlikely, given that the state of Florida and the fact that they're able to show some just kind of baseline competence, but that's really all we can say from it, right? Because we didn't actually know anything about either of these two teams going into it. It was very, very close. I thought the teams were, solid performing, but until you know what they're playing against, it's really, really hard to kind of measure up or kind of put a measuring stick to it and figure out what you're actually watching. It didn't have that feel to me, though. I will say, like last year in season 1, we were watching Shock versus Boston very, very early, or was it Shock versus Boston? No, it was Shanghai versus Boston. And I remember saying after it, this felt like I'm watching 12. 11 versus 12, right? Like this felt like bad Overwatch.
Preseason? That might have been, no. That was,
I think it was like week 1 or something.
Yeah,
it was very early. It could have been preseason for all I know, who knows. But this didn't have that feel to me. So we'll have to kind of wait and see exactly where these two teams shake out. I don't think either of them played any other match on the weekend. So I'm basically just putting a huge question mark next to both of these teams, erring towards the side of farther down the tier list than higher up on it. But again, we'll find out next week when we see them line up against some other opponents.
I really, I want to see Guangzhou play some more and do well, just so I can, play that drop. I will say this is another match that I would suggest you go back and rewatch. It was another really close one, and I just love the ending of this match. The just utter bamboozle that happened at the very, very end to seal it off was A+ in my book. Moving on here, I think this is arguably the first, this is definitely an upset match that we saw this week. Paris Eternal 3-1 over London Spitfire. Man, I don't know if anyone predicted this. If someone did, show me some sort of time-stamped proof that you did, and I'll give you a high five on Discord. But, man, I don't think anyone was predicting this to happen.
That's a lot of work for a high five, because I don't think anybody actually did it, so they'd probably have to doctor the evidence. Yeah, this was definitely a big surprise. The Paris Eternal roster, to me, looked very underwhelming coming in. I'm still not sure it's not, but what I am sure of is that London is struggling a little bit right now, and Paris, if there was ever a meta that was going to suit them, it was going to be this GOATS meta. Like I said, this is a team that's really, really well coached. They've got a lot of quality coaches in that locker room, so they're going to be prepared. It's just going to have to really work itself out for them. My big questions for them aren't, can they play well in GOATS anymore? I think they did show that, and doing it against London, I think, tells us enough, right? That they're probably pretty good at the composition. Even if London's struggling at it, this was our champions last year. They should be at least a decent team, even in what's a quote bad meta for them. So yeah, I think Paris is looking decent in this meta. A lot of questions about 2-2-2. Shadowburn's on the bench, so if you drafted him in fantasy, I don't know, you should have learned your lesson from last year.
Shadowburned again.
Shadow benched. So it'll be interesting to see, that dynamic. 2-2-2 would obviously bring him back in. So maybe there is some hope. Maybe it's not as bad as I originally thought. But again, it's week 1. Nobody's season's made yet. Nobody's season's lost yet. Cautiously optimistic for Paris fans, though. At bare minimum, it looks like this stage might be strong for him. I know ZP actually predicted him to win the stage just because of their comfortability on goats, but he did that after the match, by the way.
Sideshow also has them at he did kind of a power ranking / tier list, I guess, to combine like Smash Bros and Overwatch, but he had Paris right now at S tier. Top.
They looked really, really strong running goats. That's bare minimum what we can definitively say after one game against the Spitfire.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these teams, that's kind of the narrative for a lot of these teams. Like, they look really good with goats. But, how much room is there in the, I guess, I'm thinking end of season playoffs always, right? Like, that's what we care about. Like, stage playoffs, they're great. They're an exhibition. That's, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What you want to do is win the championship. And we saw, definitely Boston last year was and Houston a little bit too, were kind of like, not necessarily one-trick ponies in terms of meta, but were like overly indexed for one meta and not super great in another one. And how great did that do for them in the end-of-season playoffs? Not so great. I mean, Boston obviously had their amazing stage, except for the final.
If you can have that 10-0 level of dominance in a stage, you can make up for a really, really stinker of a stage. Boston showed that last year,
right?
But Houston showed that you can't have one really, really strong stage followed by 3 mediocre stages. Right. That's just not quite good enough. Maybe that gets you in a play-in situation like we'll have this year into the wild card round. But nobody's aiming for the wild card round. Everybody's aiming for the top 6 spots to just legitimately get it.
But then I don't want to go too deep into this because we have a lot to talk about. So you still have to have the stars align for the stage 4 meta to be in your favor, right? Or else it's all for naught. Because if you get the chance to play in your play-in and it's a bad meta for you, I guess we just lose, right? Like, it's not dive or it's not anti-dive, whatever. It's not goats, but definitely a big upset there for Paris. Guinman and Monkey Prince both say they have proof that they predicted it. I'll take them for their words. If they want to show me, I'll give them a high five. But move on. I got 2 right here for you. Boom. Oh, I just knocked my butt. I just ripped everyone's ears there. That's courtesy of Monkey Prince and Guinman. Let's move on here. NYXL taking a 3-1 over the Washington Justice. I mean, Washington took a map, but I think this is much more of a New York is not the absolute juggernaut, untouchable powerhouse that they were last year, more so than Justice looks like anything, because they really didn't.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a good showing for the Justice. I mean, props to them. It's big to take a map against a team that's established like New York for sure. It showed a kind of baseline level of competence to me, but my memory of that match, and again, it was kind of ugly, so I didn't. Definitely didn't rewatch it or anything like that. New York's just kind of bad at Horizon Lunar Colony is kind of what I took
bad.
From that. The Justice got a point on Rialto, but other than that, I mean, they even Horizon Lunar Colony was 1-0. They didn't even have to take the second point. So
and NYXL tried some weird comp with Nene on Tracer and Libero on, I think it was Libero on Farah, and a really weird attack.
It was their Volskaya, but they won map 4, basically.
Right.
What it was to compare it to the Houston.
Right,
weekend.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's Houston, or not Houston. Washington is probably not going to be one of those top-end teams. They've got a lot of issues. They're rotating people around as well. They're another one of these expansion teams. They're doing it with main support, though. They got Fazix on main support as well as Hyunyu, and they switched them up 2 maps and 2 maps. Isn't that your shot caller? Maybe not, it doesn't have to be. Your main tank could be doing it, whatever. But I don't want to be messing around with my shot caller, my main support. That's of all the positions, one to me, the support line needs consistency. The tank line needs consistency. Main support probably most of all. Main support and main tank are really, really hard for me to swap in. So I want to see them get it figured out and really try to grow with, whatever 6 they think is best. Hopefully they kind of get down to doing that. So
yeah, for sure. Moving on here, Hangzhou Spark finishing out their 2-0 week, 3-2 over LA Valiant.
Yeah, got a squeaker there. Man, fans of Custa, I feel bad for you guys. Kuki comes in out of nowhere to take the main support job from Custa on the Los Angeles Valiant. A whole nother level of changes that we really didn't see coming from LA. And I think if maybe I'm not going to say the decision's wrong, because I thought Kuki performed really, really well in the role. But I think the team might have performed a little better if they kind of had Custa around. It's tough to say because obviously scrims were there. But did Custa need replacing? Did you need to pull in a main tank player and switch his role? To me, what this does more than anything is just tells me on this team for the LA Valiant, roles are not sacred. No. I've regularly kind of been I just reject role swap ideas out of hand, but for the Valiant now, I think we're just going to need to accept them. Kareev was one we did see coming a little bit. The way they didn't really sign to replace soon, and Kareev's past, the fact that even in season 1 they tried Kareev on DPS in that role for a little while, kind of signaled that one, but this one was a complete surprise. Yeah, I don't really have too much else to say. The Valiant looked like they were a team that was trying to commit hard to goats, just didn't really get it get it figured out quite fast enough, and lost a really close match. It's not really anything to worry about here if you're a Valiant fan. Great for Hangzhou. They're living up to the hype, but again, I wonder if these close matchups don't swing in the other direction if they continue to swap their roster around and make all those changes and everybody else stays cemented and gets everything figured out and has better momentum, things like that. So maybe just the wrong time for the Valiant to play against them, but I think both teams here are working on getting their rosters synergized and working together at full speed. And yeah, the Spark pulled out a close one.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, LA Valiant pretty much always from a ranking standpoint is if you're doing the tiers, they're the bottom of the high tier, top of the mid tier generally. And if we look back in hindsight, this might just look like it makes complete sense. If Hangzhou is as hype and as high up as many people are predicting right now, they are potentially a top 5 team in a lot of people's rankings. They could be a high tier team, and if a low end of high tier team loses to a high tier team, that's just how it all pans out. So yeah, I mean, a little bit more of a placement match, I think, for Spark. Obviously huge for an expansion team to come out and win 2-0 in their first week.
We definitely do need to refigure out the Valiant too here, though, with all those changes.
For sure. Moving on, Vancouver Titans win the just hardest match ever against the Shanghai Dragons, who've yet to win a match in franchise history with their franchise opener. I think absolutely nothing was gained here other than, Runaways not worse than the worst team in sports history.
Not much more to be gained. It was honestly even worse for Shanghai here when they brought Gamzu in. His complete lack of chemistry with the team was apparent, but I like that they brought him in anyways, right? You were behind the 8 ball. You knew how hard it was to manage a match without a main tank player. Yes, this might be a worse performance, but the stage time, I think, is really valuable to bringing him up to speed. It really highlights what they need to focus on right now, right? The fact that they went through that rough match, took that beating, is going to really help them focus this week on what they need to do to just bring Gamzu up into the plan. I think Diem looks really strong on the hit scan role for Shanghai, so there's definitely some pieces here for them to work with. But again, it's going to take them a minute. the Fearless thing was a blow to that team, and that's why for the stage 1 power rankings, I want to say I had them 18, 19, or 20. Like, they were really, really far down there, and this was why, because not everybody gets to step in and just have the effect that Fissure had on the Boston Uprising. Like, that was an outlier to me. And even that had a bit of a honeymoon period. Like, going into their second match, it wasn't quite as good as it was as their first one, I didn't think. So we saw the effects of that. We saw Vancouver's a solid team, but we didn't get to know much more because of the strength of the opponent. So we'll continue to keep our eye on them to figure out where they stand.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on here, we talked at length about both Houston and Boston, but Boston pulls out the 3-2 victory over Houston here. Any quick notes on this match, Death?
It was another very similar situation to what happened the last time around, where I think Houston stepped on their own toes. I'm losing faith fast in the coaching staff for Houston. They just don't seem like their heads are on straight. I think they're a team that would absolutely excel in a GOATS meta if they would commit to it, but they don't seem to want to do that. They seem more interested in playing 3 DPSs and things like that, and they're playing away from their strengths, and that to me is the coaching staff. Individually, I thought a lot of people on Houston played really well in this match. I thought Muma pretty much beat up Fusions pretty hard in the tank battle. I thought Raucus looked really good. Boink had a phenomenal weekend overall. So there's a lot here from both sides to like, other than the scorer from Houston. But yeah, I mean, either way you look at it, it was a rough go for Houston, but they did at least have bright spots. There's things I think they can build on and fix, but right now the coaches need to fix these bad maps. These bad maps are killing this team and already cost them 2 games. Yep.
Boston, man, looking, even though they lost against NYXL, they're looking a lot better than a lot of people predicted them post week 1. So definitely keep an eye on them.
Very competitive. They should be.
Yes, definitely. Philadelphia Fusion moving on 3-2 over the Atlanta Reign here. Anything notable from this one?
This was a really interesting match for Atlanta. Listen, Massa is really, really good on the main support. He really impressed me this weekend a lot. The tank line for Atlanta looked really good. This one was super, super close. So this is another one you're going to want to go back and rewatch if you didn't get a chance to see it. We're we're probably at the hour mark just about already, I would have to say.
You are correct.
Halfway through the show. So I'm going to really pare these down, but it did feel a little bit to me like maybe we were looking at bad Philly some. I don't want to take away from Atlanta's performance, but they showed inconsistencies and needed Carpe to bail them out again, something we saw a lot from them last year. So I think maybe they just didn't have their best game, but it's very hard to tell. We'll see.
But seeing Philly be able to win when it's bad Philly is huge for them. Like, still being able to pull it out is absolutely huge.
Yeah, and we don't know for sure it was bad Philly. We have to wait and see.
True. All right. The last 2 matches are the final 2 pieces of the parody puzzle. LA Gladiators 3-2 over the San Francisco Shock.
Yeah, the Shock were looking like the cleanest team after their 4-0 at Dallas. Showed to be human. They're a team kind of like the expansions, doing a lot of swapping. It's not Smurf or Super. It seems to be a mix of the 2 of them. It's not Choi Hyo Bin or Nevix. It's a mix of the 2 of them. I think it might be that they need to do like the Reinhardt-Winston split with the tanks just out of necessity. That's not the case for the off-tank position. They look like a much better team to me when Choi Hyo Bin is in. I don't understand using Nevix regularly like this. Use him in easier matchups, sure, something like that. Keep him fresh, because if you do have an illness or something like that and you're forced into needing him, he's a really valuable asset. But overall, I just think Choi Hyo Bin gives them a higher ceiling, and I think they played themselves a little bit here, just getting a little too cute with swaps and cost themselves a match to the Gladiators.
Yeah. No striker. No, and I don't even blame Shock for not playing striker, because like, it's not a meta for striker, or at least not a meta for striker to excel in. But man, it just is tough for me to think of a situation where I'm buying striker and not playing it. But they're playing the best team, the best roster that they think that they can field. And before we get to the last one, the funny thing about this is that this actually is not this like the transitive property truthers have the perfect scenario going into this last match. Oh, okay. San Francisco beats Dallas Fuel. That means Fuel's at the bottom, Shock's at the top. Then we see, well, basically it was going to line up, and if Soul beats Dallas here, it all lines up very perfectly. It's Soul at the top, then Gladiators, then Shock, then Fuel. But that doesn't happen. The Dallas Fuel pull out a 3-1 victory over the Soul Dynasty and completely throw it in the face of the Transitive Property Truthers. What happened here, Death?
They were staring exactly what I talked about last week in the face. They were 0-1. They got bodied in their first match. They were coming into this one against Soul just like last season, where a loss could have sent them into a tailspin, and they pulled it out. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. They won this one decisively. They did it in the way we expected it to happen the least. Effect came out. AKM came in. He popped off. He played at a level we haven't seen from him since before Overwatch League was a thing. It was great to see, because AKM in the past has been a really, really strong player and a very exciting and fun player to watch. It's been so long. I really did not think it was going to be possible, but he came in, he popped off on the Widowmaker. And he popped off on the Zarya. He played very, very well in both of those roles. His Widowmaker kind of was the nail in the coffin that brought home King's Row for this team. I think they played really, really well. It's remarkable to me that, like, the things I was the most confident in for Dallas are what didn't show up this weekend, and like they still managed to get a win. I was thinking to myself, OGE and Unko are the staples that are gonna keep this team relevant, and they were a little quieted down. I don't think it was a great weekend for OGE. So if they can get, and what we really worried about was their DPS play, and I'm still super not sold on Zachary. But if AKM can be a difference maker and Zachary can be adequate, and then the tank play can get back in, it's going to be a little bit better for them than I think I anticipated, but I did have them kind of bottom of the mid-tables here, so not willing to say they're any better than that yet, but my eyebrows are definitely up, paying attention to them going forward, and I want to see if they can continue to get production from their DPS core. That's going to be very, very important to them.
I'm just, without any biases in there, and as much as I love ragging on Fuel and Fuel fans, like, I'm just glad to see they didn't slouch and crumple after, like you said, getting dominated game one. They came out, they beat a team that a lot of people predicted to be better than them. A lot of people predicted Soul to be top. But the parity puzzle, man, like, it's there. That parity vortex is still a swirling. And just for those of you who didn't know, we have Dallas beat Soul, Soul beat Gladiators, Gladiators beat Shock, but then Shock beat Dallas, it's just an infinite regression circle. You can never tell who's better than anyone. So really glad to see that. And it really, like, goes to the, like, what we will see traditionally in baseball or basketball or even football, where, like, less so football because they don't play as many games, but where it's like, hey, I'm just going to pick random teams. The Arizona Diamondbacks are an objectively better team in terms of record and whatnot than the San Diego Padres. But the Padres, for some reason, they always win against the Diamondbacks. It was like with Houston last year with London. All signs pointed to London being the better team than Houston in almost every category, yet have a just zero in the win column against Houston. It's nice.
Individual matchups matter a lot in these games.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that really starting to come to fruition more so in Overwatch League already. So really great there. I think we talked about a lot of the storyline stuff in it, and we're running late. So do you want to just jump to breaking down?
Well, if I'm being honest with you, I thought we were only going to do the storylines. I didn't think we were going game by game through the.
Well,
so
we'll get back into
what we'll do next
week.
But
we'll do that.
We'll talk about this after. And in the meantime, you get a 2-hour episode this week. So
yeah. Well, we are
going to be quick with the previews here, because we do have another show after this.
Yes, Game 1, Washington Justice versus London Spitfire. They're playing on Busan, Numbani, Horizon Lunar Colony, and Rialto. Man, I can roll my R's sometimes. Death, I've got London 3-1 here. What do you got?
I got London 3-1. London needs to hit the panic button if they lose this one. Do something drastic for this meta. Not like long-term panic button kind of a thing, but they'll need to make some drastic changes to figure out this meta if they lose this one. Washington, I don't think, even with London struggles, is on a tier with them. So yeah, give me London 3-1.
Yeah, they lose this one. Man, the conversation shifts very drastically in the downward category.
And it won't be because 0-3 is an unrecoverable record. It will be because of the quality of the opponents that they lost to, basically. So
from hero to zero, I can read the headline now because I read it. Next up, we have Philadelphia Fusion versus Florida Mayhem playing on Nepal Numbani, Temple of Anubis, and Route 66. Philly 4-0 for me.
Yeah, no Saya player, no faith, 4-0 Philadelphia.
Yeah, unless those irons are burning incredibly hot in that fire, I cannot, in good faith.
It's going to take some time for those.
Show it like our old mantra, show it first, and then we'll be, as much as I am a person who picks Florida Mayhem to win in situations where they don't, I'm not doing it here.
We've shown time and time again a desire to root for Florida. We just can't.
But I also like to root for Philly too. Moving on, Guangzhou Charge versus Dallas Fuel. And just in case you don't know which one Guangzhou Charge is, it's there we go. First Dallas Fuel, Busan, Hollywood, Temple of Anubis, Route 66. Who do you got, Death?
I'm going to take Dallas here 3-2. I think if they can just, they don't even have to get that same level of impact from the DPS play, but I'm just the fact that they're capable of it wasn't something I was even sure of. So I'm gaining a little bit of faith in them. I still know nothing about Guangzhou other than they lost to the team going in. Everybody and their brother thought was going to be the absolute worst. So the needle's going down a little bit for Guangzhou and up a little bit for Dallas. Teams that I maybe going in thought had a chance to be pretty close. I'm going to say Dallas ekes it out because who knows which one of their two teams show up. You know, they've shown two completely different faces so far. So who knows? It could be a squeaker. 3-2 Dallas.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I've got 3-2, but I'm going with Guangzhou. If for no other reason than I get to press this button more times.
Well, you know what that means, Blevins. We've got to flip a coin.
Oh, we got the coin.
We've got the coin. We've got heads for Dallas, tails for Guangzhou. The head side has the beard, and this is tails. So the coin is going with the Guangzhou Charge. Sorry, Dallas fans.
All right, I got to press that button like 4 times. I'm happy. Moving on, Seoul Dynasty versus Chengdu Hunters. Who do you got? Oh, sorry. They're playing on Ilios, Hollywood, Horizon Lunar Colony, and Rialto.
Yeah, still don't know anything about Chengdu other than maybe slightly better than Guangzhou. I do have some confidence in Seoul. They need to, Michelle needs to play better. They need to continue to make improvements. I think they can get more out of Jexay, but for the time being, at least, I'm not going to. This is me. I'm still the same person. I don't rapidly change my opinion of teams based off of 1 week, even if it's all we have to go on. So I still have Seoul considerably better. I'm going to give them the 4-0 win here.
Yeah, Seoul, of course, is part of that parity puzzle, which is kind of a vortex. I would put somewhere in the upper half for sure of the rankings. I think this is going to be a placement match for Chengdu. I'm not expecting them to win. I've got Seoul here 3-1, but if Chengdu can look competitive on their lost maps and maybe take a map or 2 even, I think they start moving up from that bottom tier to okay, we start putting them closer to the middle. So definitely a placement match for Chengdu. Next up, Atlanta Reign versus Toronto Defiant, Busan, Numbani, Horizon Lunar Colony, Dorado. What do you got?
Still missing Neko here for Toronto, so I still foresee a lot of mistakes. I thought Atlanta looked pretty solid, particularly just I'm falling in love with Massa so fast, Blevins. It's honestly kind of crazy how good of a Lucio player he is to me, in what I've been able to see from him so far. They're fun. Listen, I think Atlanta low-key threw one of their matches last time because it was game 5.3, and they're like, DeFran, play Torbjorn on King of the Hill. Don't do that for me, please, guys. I'm putting.
He played it on map 1 as well.
I will absolutely be rooting for Toronto here, but I just think Atlanta showed a little bit more competence, less mistakes, so I think Atlanta will have something to capitalize on. Might flip it if Neko is back, but he's not, so I don't got to think too hard about it, Atlanta.
Yeah, not seeing Neko until next week, I believe.
Nope, he's gone for 3, so he'll be in for their second match this week.
Wait, he played 1 match last week.
Oh, you're totally right. I need to fix the foul play notes. He only played once last week, and I'm done. Okay. Yep. So not at all this week.
Not at all this week, exactly.
Good catch.
Yeah, so I've got Toronto here 3-2. I think a lot of what you said is correct. I think the coin flip here is Toronto. Like, can they tie up those loose ends? Are they going to have that map? Are they going to have any maps like that map 2 against Houston where they just were like, this is a real team. Oh my God, there's 200,000 people watching, and just crumble? Or are we going to see like consistently good play the whole time? If we do, I think this could possibly even be a 3-1 Toronto. But throw a map away here, and really kind of a lot of coin flip moments against Houston. All of a sudden, Toronto is loses that last one 3-2 in the other favor, 3-1 like you mentioned. I've got faith in Toronto. I think that they, especially near the end, once they got that kind of confidence built, they really started to look good. And if they can, if they go back, watch their tape and be like, hey Yakpung, see here on Route 66 where you didn't ult, and then the next fight where you still had your ult and you didn't ult, and then the fight after that, you didn't ult. If you ulted it one of those times, you'd have double the number of ults. And if you would have ulted optimally, you probably could have had 3 or 4 times that number of ults. But it's neither here nor there. I think
you're not bitter about it.
I'm not bitter about it. I just think it's like
won, but yeah,
I think it's just like, hey, you watch that back and be like, oh, well, I'm an idiot. I was just, it's one of those things where like you're up there and you're like, I'm not going to use my ult because if I mess it up, Reddit's going to be like, oh, this idiot whiffed his ult. And like maybe they do that, maybe they don't. But like if it's your first time up there, you haven't been under that magnifying glass yet. It's something that's going through the back of your mind, at least potentially. So
it could have been completely not his fault too, in the sense that like maybe one of the supports was calling their ultimate usage and things like that. So
maybe he did it for a reason. I don't know.
Yeah. But it sure looked wrong to us at the time.
From my definitely not pro perspective, it looked weird. And just go back and watch the tape, and if you agree with it, good. Continue doing what you're doing to make you win, and if you thought it was silly, then maybe you learned something. Moving on, NYXL versus LA Valiant, Nepal, Hollywood, Volskaya, Rialto. Oh, we need to flip a coin for Atlanta versus Toronto, by the way.
We sure do. Heads is Atlanta, tails is Toronto, and tails for Toronto. Coming up again, tails.
Let's go.
Never failing here today.
Never fails. Let's go, Toronto. Okay, NYXL versus Valiant. Who you got, Death?
NYXL 3-1. I'm not betting against them until they start losing some games. The Valiant have some things to figure out. This is a rough opponent to figure things out against, even if New York is vulnerable in this meta. I don't see the Valiant taking 3-1.
Yeah. Show me the loss before I predict it. Shanghai Dragons versus Boston Uprising, Ilios, Kings Row, Horizon Lunar Colony, Rialto. What do you got?
How up to speed can they get Gamzu? That's really the question. It's going to really depend entirely on that. I'm thinking it'll be better, not perfect. Boston should get Color Hex back. I don't know. I'm blanking on him. I was so confident going into it, but screwing up the Neko one just has me completely off my game here. But
I feel like Color Hex was a 2-game, if I'm remembering correctly.
I thought he was 2, but honestly, I don't know.
So he would be back if it's 2, but I don't remember.
Yeah, somebody hopefully in chat can check for us, and we can fill it in and fill in the blanks later. I'm going to give Boston the win in a squeaker here. Shanghai's not quite there yet. When you've lost 42 times in a row, it's real hard to pick them, no matter what the circumstances are. Boston 3-2.
Yeah, I got Boston 3-1 here. Boston, I think, deceptively just looked a lot better than we had them going in. Shanghai looked not as good as a lot of people had them at the middle. So, yeah. 3-1 Boston for me. No coin needed here. Next up, Houston Outlaws versus Hangzhou Spark, Busan, Kings Row, Temple of Anubis, and Dorado. Deathblow. Who do you got here?
Blevins, can you read those maps back to me again?
Busan, Kings Row, Temple of Anubis, Dorado.
No Volskaya, no Route 66. Give me Houston in a 3-1. Don't at me. Don't even care. This team is switching their tanks around. I think Houston's going to win the tank battle. I think Lynx are played markedly better on the Brigitte in the second matchup. I think things will come together for Houston a little bit. Don't get me wrong. I'm only doing this because those 2 maps aren't in the map pool, and it will be very hard to pick Houston if both of them are ever in the map pool again. Second match. But I'm going to double down a little bit. I don't change my mind drastically from 1 week. Not doing it. I don't see a map here they're going to choke. They've looked really good on Busan. They did lose that against Toronto, but they looked really strong there. And Kings Row was always a Houston map. Temple of Anubis favored Houston, and Dorado has been a Houston map. So I count 3 maps that I think Houston is very, very strong on. I'm picking them, if for no other reason, then I've got a lot of room to gain after my week 1 of games.
Top A team versus a bottom A team. Easy Hangzhou 3-1 here. Please at Deathblow. Coin, what do we got, baby?
Coin. We're going heads for Hangzhou. Tails
get out of here. You're gonna get punished. You're gonna get punished.
I didn't actually. It's tails, so the coin is going with Houston.
All right.
But yeah,
it's okay.
Listen, it's an outsider pick.
Yeah,
it's an outsider pick. Okay, the smart money here is on Hangzhou, but I don't think it's crazy under any circumstances. I get it. You guys love the color pink and baby blue because we're all, little girls. But I'm not
literally adding you.
You have to. I know they are good. I don't care. You guys can think Houston's season's over if you want to. Completely fine by me. I'm not there yet.
I don't think it's over. I think they just have to lose a bunch more games this season. But let's move on here. I didn't throw nearly enough shade at the top of the show, so I got to get it all in now. L.A. Gladiators versus Paris Eternal. Nepal, Numbani, Temple of Anubis, Dorado. I don't actually know if I agree with my own pick here, but who do you got, Ted?
I'm sorry, which one were we on again?
LA Gladiators versus Paris Eternal.
Okay. Yeah, listen, Paris looked really good running goats, but I think the Gladiators are just a team that I'm more confident in. I have this one going really, really close. I'm going to give it 3-2 to the Gladiators, but this one could easily go either direction if you want to flip your.
I'm flipping
far from required to pick one of these two teams. I think either one could easily go.
Yeah, I'm going with Paris here, 3-1. I put Gladiators originally, and I don't really know why. I really did like what Paris had to show. Granted, this is only their second game, not their third, so it's really, you can only take so much from one game. But I'm buying a little bit into the hype train, even though I was very much not. I, unlike Deathblow, love to swing my picks wildly with my emotions, so I'm going with Paris here. Let's bust out that coin and see who is the coin picking.
All right, so we have heads for the Gladiators, tails for the Paris Eternal. Tails again, man. I'm not even lying. I dropped a coin this time, so I can't prove it, but it was tails.
Wow.
Paris Eternal. Also, Blevins, you're really bad at knowing what the 3-letter abbreviations for these teams
I don't know.
are going to be.
I just take the first 2 letters of the first word and then the first letter of the last word. It's really dumb.
Oh my
god. Next up, Philadelphia Fusion versus Dallas Fuel. Busan, Numbani, Horizon Lunar Colony, Dorado. I've got Philly here, 3-1. What do you got?
Same thing. I'm going to go Philly 3-1. It's just a measure of confidence here. Like, this could easily go the opposite direction. Everybody's got their minds made up about every match so far because we saw 1 week, and I think this one might be heavily picked in Philly's favor. I'm going to join that side of things. But listen, if Dallas gets that production from their DPS, they are one of those teams that can have the ability to upset anybody at any time. I'm not sure they will. It's, to me, less than a coin flip that they pull it off, so I'm going with Philly 3-1. But again, like I said, all Dallas has to do is kind of repeat that level of performance.
I think, given that information, this might be a flip. This might be the flip of the week. If you need, obviously, after 1 week, you probably don't need to make up too much on your pick'ems. But if you're looking to gamble a little bit, well, yeah, I probably. Oh, actually, I did all right. If you're looking to gamble a little bit,
the leaderboard's not there, so we don't know exactly how bad it is. But
if you're looking to gamble a little bit, this could be a flip of the week because I think a lot of people are going to be picking Philly here.
Probably not super one-sided now that I'm thinking about it, because Dallas's fan base is pretty big and well represented on this platform. But if people are picking with their heads, it should be a Philly thing.
Yeah. Moving on here. Vancouver Titans versus Guangzhou Charge, Nepal, Hollywood, Volskaya Industries, and Route 66. I've got Runaway, a.k.a. Vancouver Titans, 3-1.
Same. Not really too much to add. Vancouver looks to be slightly better, at least slightly better than average is kind of where I'm pegging them right now, just to be safe and not kind of overcommit one direction or the other. Guangzhou seems to be below average, so I don't necessarily think this is two teams on the same tier, but I'm open to being surprised because we don't actually know anything.
Placement match. Speaking of placement matches, Chengdu Hunters versus Florida Mayhem, Nepal, Kings Row, Temple of Anubis, Rialto. What do you got?
Oh, he's still here. I'm so sorry. I'm going to take Chengdu 4-0 over Florida here. It's just about a baseline level of competence that's been displayed so far. And I like I said multiple times, I haven't seen that from Florida yet. So I have no faith in their ability to start Saya player or get the wins.
Yeah, I got Chengdu here 3-1. Show it to me. Show it to me first.
Last week I'd have went 3-1 Florida, but man, did that match scare me.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a 4-0, but show me something, and we'll start gaining back.
Start with Saya on the stage. I'll give you that map.
And on Sunday we've got Hangzhou Spark versus London Spitfire, Ilios, Numbani, Lunar Colony, and Dorado. Who do you got?
Yeah,
don't know why.
This one's definitely tough, but it's two teams kind of seeming to head in opposite directions, and I don't know. I can't imagine Hangzhou losing both of them, and I went out on a limb on the other one to pick with my heart, but honestly, I could see either of the two going against Hangzhou here. I think people are overreacting to London and Houston both, less so to London, but I'm going to give this one to Hangzhou in a real squeaker, and I think it's essentially a coin flip. But yeah, I'm going to go 3-2.
Yeah,
Spark.
I've also got Spark here. I got him 3-1. It very easily could be a 3-2. But luckily, the maps don't matter in Pick'em now. So pick to your heart's content. This is This is definitely a just pick whichever one you pick whichever one you like that day, because it's going to be close, I think. Or possibly, I think it's either going to be a really close match or Hangzhou comes out and dominates, because I think Hangzhou is in a position to really pull ahead here, whereas I think London is much more in a position to be like, hey, we're still relevant. I don't see a domination from London here. Now, anything can happen, but that in and of itself is leaning me more towards Hangzhou here.
I would be surprised if this was a very, very decisive outcome.
Yep.
Either direction, whoever wins.
Yep. Moving on here, we've got the classic HNP co-host rivalry match. NYXL versus Houston Outlaws. Had to change my score here right at the end. Nepal, Hollywood, Temple of Anubis, Route 66, Deathblow. Who do you got?
Someday this will be a real rivalry, and Houston will be up at the top of the league. But we're not there yet, and I mean, listen, I'm not crazy. Like I said, Route 66 and Hollywood, they're right there. They're staring us in the face. Volskaya's not there to make it a clean 4-0 easy clap for New York, I don't think. I think Houston's going to be able to steal a map. They've looked really good on control, though that is kind of a strength of New York, so could easily be a 4-0. But I think either Temple of Anubis or Nepal has the potential to flip Houston's way. I'll give New York a decisive 3-1.
Hey, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be a 4-0 either. I've got the classic patented NYXL 5-0. Let's go. Moving on here. Toronto Defiant versus Los Angeles Valiant, Ilios, Hollywood, Horizon Lunar Colony, Dorado. Death. What's the call here?
Man, Toronto showed everything they showed. Still aren't going to have Neko back, and it's just really, really difficult for me with the mistakes they showed last week to just be confident in them to pull it off again. Certainly possible, right? Like obviously they just did it. Mm-hmm. But I think even with the Valiant kind of figuring things out, figuring out their new pieces, I think they're going to be able to squeak out a win. And I'm going to go with 3-1 just because I can. In my head, it's really hard to erase some of the mistakes we saw from Toronto from your memory. They did a great job. I mean, the first thing they had to do to erase them was to to win the match that they made them in, but now they need to not make them again.
Right.
And so maybe I'll adjust this if they show very strongly in their first match of the week, but without having the chance to see that right now, I'm going to take LA 3-1, probably closer than a lot of 3-1s though, because Toronto's pretty solid.
I agree wholeheartedly. This is a I don't know if this year you get the chance to wait before. Like, can you make your picks after the first match has started?
You can adjust them.
Okay, you can adjust them. This is hey, if Toronto looked unstellar and was showing a lot of those mistakes, flip this. This will be a valiant win. If they looked really good, they end up taking out a victory against the Reign. All of a sudden, Toronto's looking like a contender here to beat Valiant and looking to potentially 3-0 their match or their first week.
And hopefully it happens, because now that week one's over, I'm officially waving my Toronto flag. I'm on board. I don't have to temper it or worry about just. I'm all in now, Toronto. You've got until you play against Houston again for me to ever root against you. So yeah, hopefully they get it right. I would love to see them take down LA and really make a statement and push to be more than a mid-table team. But yeah, we'll probably not see that till Neko gets here, but who knows? They surprised us once. They can certainly do it again. But we need the coin here.
Yes, I've got Toronto 3-2, by the way.
Toronto's got to be tails at this point, right?
Yeah.
Because it's literally just the way this coin works. Apparently, I'm not it's literally it's tails again. So the coin is on my side here, even if I couldn't make my head make the same pick. So yeah.
All right, last match of the week. We've got Vancouver Titans versus San Francisco Shock, Busan, Kings Row, Volsky Industries, Route 66. What do you got?
Man, I just want to see I wish I could have seen a little bit more from Vancouver before I made this pick, because I could easily see Vancouver being the better team here, especially after the Shock faltered a little bit, are doing their tank shuffle. That's something Vancouver doesn't really have to worry about. They came in with the full roster and a couple supplements that aren't going to really see the stage too much at all. So this one is, to me, a real coin flip. I just like peak San Francisco Shock better than kind of the unknown trying to place Vancouver among these teams. Sure, we're pretty sure they're legitimate. How legitimate? Because the Shock against Dallas especially looked lights out, really good, and yeah, made some mistakes in their second match, but definitely have the upward momentum to be the best team this stage if they can get it together. Yeah,
I mean, I think a lot of those same things could be said about Vancouver potentially. I think they're, they are in a position to possibly be a top team in the league right now. We didn't see much. Obviously, they steamrolled Shanghai Dragons. Again, this isn't in the same sort of situation as the last match, or the last match we talked about with Toronto. Like, if Vancouver looks bad against Guangzhou Charge, all of a sudden, hey, this is an easy San Francisco Shock pick. But if they dominate Guangzhou Charge, which again, I think even in and of themselves, if they 4-0 Guangzhou, what does that really mean? I don't know. I still have confidence in them, but if they lose to Guangzhou Charge, all of a sudden this is an easy Shock pick. But in that vein, I have Vancouver here 3-2.
The coin says
one final coin.
Titans would be tails, right? I mean, I kind of want San Francisco to win, so I don't know, man. I'm gonna do it's tails again. I'm gonna do some tests on this coin, because even if I hadn't used it all last season to know that sometimes it comes up heads, I think I had a weighted coin here. But yeah, I'm not lying. It's tails again.
Never fails.
So Titans win, I guess.
Titans win. All right. That's going to be it, guys, for that. Whew. We didn't hit 2 hours. We're just at an hour and a half, so that was actually not too bad. We will definitely keep it a little more concise next week. But yeah. So, Def, any last-minute stuff before we go? Or are you just
I finally got a heads. I got 3 more tails in a row before I got a heads. I'm doing it now. No, that's it, guys. Don't let anybody tell you your team sucks. I'm here to tell you that it can't get better. Well, you'll know it's true when Houston wipes the floor with the Hangzhou Spark, and I get to dance on all the haters. And if they lose, hell, I was just some crazy homer, and it's really no loss on my end. So
yeah, the easy pick.
Yeah, it was definitely an easy pick. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, sticking with us through a long episode. Enjoy week 2. It's going to be a crazy ride this year, guys. Absolutely crazy. I hope you're ready for it.
Yeah, going to be great. But guys, thank you all for watching. Make sure you check us out. HighNoonPodcast.com has all of our links and stuff. You can also find us on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, all that good stuff at HighNoonPodcast.com. Patreon.com/HighNoonPodcast is where you can support us financially if you so choose, which is where Lee C came in with that awesome $5 patronage. So thank you so much, guys. But that is going to be it for this episode. For Deathblow, I am the Blevins, and remember, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. He threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
Tails, 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 tails.